Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to make something very clear. Blue lives matter in America.
State-of-the-art stuff, right?
Fit us in, absolutely.
All right, excellent. Are we back? All right, we're back here on the Paying Attention television program podcast. You can find us on my Facebook page. You can find us on our YouTube page. Go to Valley Patriot. Go to Tom Duggan or the Valley Patriot on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and all of our social media accounts. We have asked 4 police chiefs to come in and talk to us about the opioid crisis. I don't think it gets talked about enough. Some people think it gets talked about too much. But when you're talking about 2,000 to 3,000 people in the state dying every year of something, I think it's important to spend a lot of time on it. We're going to be doing that not just in today's show. We're going to have a rotating opioid crisis update every single week for you. Sitting here with me, I'm amazed we got all 4 of them in today. I called all 4 thinking maybe I'd get one. I got all of them. To my left, one of my favorite chiefs in the world. Sorry, nothing against any of the rest of you, but I've known Chief Solomon for a little bit longer. We've been through some scraps together too, so we've kind of been through some wars. Chief Joe Solomon to my left. To his left is Chief Riter from Boxford. We've actually also had a little bit of fun together too, right?
Yes, we did.
And then to his left is Chief DeNaro, who I just can't wait to hear from because I know he's got some really good stuff for us. And then a guy on my far left, your far right, a guy who's a cop's cop. This is a guy who, even as chief, is going out and answering calls. When the guys from LA came in to do the movie, they asked me which chiefs to go talk to, and I said, make sure you talk to Solomon, make sure you talk to Gray, and make sure you don't talk to Fitzpatrick because he's not going to give you anything anyway. But ever since I've known Chief Gray, since he was a patrolman, every time I saw him, he was wrestling with someone on the ground. He had somebody trying to throw a shot at him, someone trying to punch him. This guy's a cop's cop. He's not one of these guys that sat behind a desk for his entire career and then just elevated up into chief. He's a real cop. So I want to throw this to you guys. You heard the news stories that we talked about. Obviously, you live it every day. And I'll let whoever wants to go first go first. What are you finding in your community with this opioid crisis? Is it as bad in your community as it is everywhere else, and how are you handling it?
Tom, can I go first?
Sure.
I'd like to first start off with, because there was talk about Lawrence earlier.
Yeah, sure.
To just say that not any one of us here will say we work with Lawrence very well, and Chief Fitzpatrick and his men and women have a real tough job.
Yeah.
We support them 100%, and they can do what they can do based on the manpower they have and the support that they have, but we support Chief Fitzpatrick and his men and women completely, and they work fantastic with us. We have a great open relationship, and it is unfortunate that a lot of the drugs come into Lawrence for distribution, but that isn't a negative on the police officers.
Right.
They're really fighting that battle, and I just wanted to say that because honestly, Chief Fitzpatrick talks to us almost daily, and we fight the battle together. And we've really, in Merrimack Valley, we believe we're all a family, and we all work together to fight this battle.
And can I just say in full disclosure, I'm not ripping on Fitzpatrick. I know when I see him, he says, "Why are you always breaking my balls?" I'm not attacking Fitzpatrick. I'm attacking Dan Rivera for not letting him loose. I'm attacking Dan Rivera for tying his hands behind his back and not allowing him to come out and talk about some of this stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've asked him, listen, can you just give me some numbers on opioids? Can you give us some numbers on what it's costing the city every time you go out to do a Narcan? And the answer I get is you have to talk to the mayor. And, you might as well just talk to a wall at that point. So I'm not ripping on Chief Fitzpatrick. I think he's a great chief. I think the Lawrence Police Department is one of the best in the state. My frustration is political, not against him.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And so for us, we were listening to statistics earlier. Our overdoses this year are down 25% compared to last year and 30% compared to the year before. However, our deaths have doubled.
Really?
And we attribute that to the fentanyl, that it's fentanyl and not heroin, where over the years we've seen heroin cut with fentanyl, and then heroin cut with a little more fentanyl. Now it's just pure fentanyl. And kids that are taking pills that they think is a Percocet, a Vicodin, a Xanax is actually fentanyl. So we're seeing the deaths increase in my city, but the total number of overdoses go down. And I think what we've surmised from our statistics is the overdoses are down in Methuen because we're not getting the calls. People are carrying Narcan themselves. We might get the call 2 or 3 days later that, we Narcaned him twice and now he needs to go to the hospital. So we believe the proliferation of Narcan is saving lives. And again, what's the cost? Every time we go out, somewhere in the area of $125 to $130, depending on the actual Narcan cost, because it fluctuates. But is it worth saving 250 lives, even if it's $120 a life? And I've had this argument with people where a man confronted me and thought we were wasting money and we shouldn't be using it. You know, me and you have talked about.
We have.
You wrote the article about are we enabling or not?
Right.
And
you brought up a thing that I thought was great during that interview, and I think it needs to be repeated here. And that's, when I said to you, there's a lot of people out there who say, well, they're a bunch of junkies. Why are you going to bother? And the chief said to me, well, look, if someone's diabetic and they don't eat right and they keep eating pizza and they keep not taking care of themselves and they have a heart attack, do we not go take care of them? Take care of their health. Do we not try to revive them if they die, just because it's their fault? And I thought that was a great.
Thank you. And that's really where I was going, and
Sorry.
I'll pass it on to them. No,
I'm
glad
upstaging
you
you.
said that. And I also believe that all of us are doing the outreach afterwards. So it's not that we Narcan you and we just send you away. Here's your candy. Come back and overdose again. You go right into our program. Our addiction specialists come right out. They try to get you into an immediate rehab. We try to get you in, detox you, then move you into a short-term care and long-term care. Sometimes over the last weekend, our workers worked, our two civilians, they worked like for 27 hours to finally get someone placed. It's usually not that hard, but it was the holiday. So Narcan, to me, is not the solution. Narcan is the Band-Aid or the tourniquet that saves your life. We move you to the next level, then our addiction specialists help you get through the system. So
now,
we are making progress, and then I'll pass.
Now, Chief Riter, if we have this huge opioid epidemic, you're in a small community of Boxford, right? It's this quaint little town. Like, I drive through Boxford, especially in the wintertime. It's just so beautiful.
It's a great spot.
It's all single family homes. It's predominantly white. It's predominantly wealthier middle class. When we look at the statistics, those are the people who are the victims of this stuff. I mean, it's the white middle class that's dying every day from. How are you guys handling that in Boxford?
We're obviously carrying Narcan in all our cars. We've used about 20 doses since 2015. And we deal with the families. We see the crisis that's left behind when there is addiction in the household, and it's crossing all age groups from your late teens into your 50s. And we're constantly aware and constantly on the lookout, and it's a regular occurrence. It's one of those things that you didn't see it coming over the years, but here it is, and it's been building for a while.
Do you have to put your guys through any kind of special training? Because this is all kind of very new for everybody, right? Just in the last 4 or 5 years that this has kind of exploded. So do you send your guys for special training, especially like I know you guys deal with the schools too. You've got a vocational school that you guys have to kind of go in with some of the other communities and police once in a while. What are you seeing with all that?
Well, we have a regional high school. We have not seen many issues in the high school. We're seeing it right outside the high school age. And we've watched it. It happens with different groups of kids. It's seen as throughout generations, whether it be from the class of 1979 to this class right now. And you're seeing pods of different kids that get hooked up in that culture. And then a lot of times they come back to their family. Then there's something we have to deal with. We have to work with the family. We have to work with the kids. And we see what happens as far as the devastation of that.
Have you seen the numbers in Boxford fluctuate? Are they pretty steady, or are they like everywhere else where they just kind of like doubling every year?
They're definitely getting, I don't say doubling, but they're definitely getting more prevalent. But we don't see a lot of it because there are people that try to take care of it inside their house. They have the ability to hopefully send people away, whether it be kids or family members away, and get treatment outside the community. And we hear bits and pieces of some of it, but we then also on the front lines of a lot of other aspects of it.
That's great. And I will come back to you because I have a couple more questions. Chief DeNaro is from Haverhill. Now, Haverhill is a very different community than Boxford or even Methuen. Methuen's a city, but it's not really a city. It's a town that's kind of a city. Boxford is a town. Haverhill's like Lawrence. Haverhill has a lot. You have a large population. You have a large population of poor people. You have a large population of immigrants. That's got to pose the same kind of problems as Lawrence. Can you talk about what you guys are doing?
We currently have a sergeant, 2 patrol officers who are designated as my contacts, and we have a caseworker, a social worker from NFI who goes out with them. We contact every person who overdoses. In the last 2 years, we've had over 500 ODs.
Wow.
And they will contact those people and try to get them into programs. We also, when we have a death, last year we had 23. This year we have 14 to date, so they are down. We go and we meet with the family. We get them into grief counseling and see what we can do for them on that aspect. Predominantly, one of the biggest problems that we have is that when they knock on the door, 99 out of 100 times the door shuts. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants help. Everybody's okay. When I talk to my officers when we're utilizing Narcan, once they wake people up, people don't want to go to the hospital. They're all set. I'm good. I'm out of here. No problem. So there are a lot of issues as far as being able to address this problem. And as Chief Solomon alluded to before, our overdoses, well, last year I think to date we were 262. This year we're 249. But that's a grossly understated number, because when we talk to the people out there, they're openly telling us, yeah, we have Narcan, and when somebody goes down, we revive them.
Right.
And then they don't call us.
And they're not reporting it.
Absolutely.
So the numbers that Kiana and Ira read earlier are probably double or triple those actual numbers because of what you guys were explaining. People are actually using the Narcan, not calling it in. They're not reporting it to anybody. So those numbers are just they're in the atmosphere.
I think a better gauge would be to determine all of the agencies that are giving out Narcan. How many doses are you giving out?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
Because that would give you a pretty good idea of the extent of the problem.
Maddie, write that down, and we'll start calling around for the next show and find out the answer to that question. Because hopefully there is an answer to that question, right?
Yeah, because I'm sure there is, because there are agencies that are giving this stuff out for free. They have to track it. I'm
Right.
sure there has to be some type of check and balance for that.
No, just to get off topic a little bit, because you're in such a tough community like Haverhill, and you've got a mayor who's a former defense attorney that hates cops. We know he hates cops. He tries to pretend that he's nice to cops, but he's not. How is that for you as the top law enforcement officer who has to be in charge of the safety of everybody in the city of Haverhill and everybody in your department who's dealing with the people on the streets? How do you handle that, other than what I saw at the city council meeting that night, which is phenomenal, by the way? Just throwing the numbers at him and just making him look like a fool. But how do you handle? You get hostility on the street from the drug dealers, from the criminals, from even some of just the regular members of the public who don't like cops. You're getting crap from your own cops sometimes, and then you're getting crap from the people that are above you. How do you handle that?
Well, I have a very supportive city council, as you know, if you've watched the meetings. I'm in my 16th year as the chief, and I have never had a council that has not supported what we're trying to do and how we do it. I'm very fortunate the way my contract is written is that I'm in charge of police services. I get to decide how to utilize those resources, where to put them, how to deploy them, from the bicycles and police cars down to the officers themselves. So I get to make those decisions. And the mayor understands that. I think he respects that. And it really doesn't, he might make a suggestion, but ultimately the decision on how we approach something, how we do something, is left up to the chief of police. So,
did he ever fix your police station? We did a big story about the mold in the police station and the fact that the roof was never put on right.
I will say this, that right now we are going out to bond to finish the windows, but
5 years later, 20 years later,
we're having a huge problem with the solar company that put panels on a new $450,000 roof, put holes in it.
It's just total mismanagement. Like, listen, if I was in that environment, I would just quit. Like, how do you go to work every day like that? Like, how do you do that?
I do that because I love the job. I mean, I don't love the politics of the job, but it's a big part of the chief's job. So, I mean, I get it, but I kind of focus on there's 65,000 people that we protect. I have 105 sworn officers or department that size. So, we have commitments and responsibilities outside of the political aspect of it, and I kind of focus on that.
Great.
And sometimes I hit a landmine every now and then.
Well,
but
I've noticed that, but you handle it well, though.
I try not to.
I have to say, you handle it well. I sometimes I'm doing this on the TV screen when I'm watching when you're talking because I'm like, wow, Solomon's the only guy I know that could get away with doing that anywhere. Chief Gray from North Andover. Now, you've got a very different community. North Andover borders Lawrence, like Methuen does, but it's a town. And like Boxford, it's mostly middle class to upper class. It's mostly white people. It's people who have a little bit more disposable income than Lawrence or Methuen does. And yet, you guys see the same types of problems Lawrence have because you're on the border. Can you talk about that a little bit? And when you're done, I want all the guys to answer and you can work it into your question. If you think that when someone gets Narcan, should it be mandatory that they go for that they be committed for like 20 days, 30 days to get rehab before they're let back out?
I think that's up to the medical professionals, but I know in North Andover, if we Narcan someone, they go to the hospital. under the new PC guidelines. North Andover has what I would call the crimes secondary to the opioid crisis, and that would be your B&Es, your larcenies from the department stores, your car breaks, and basically what people are using as a means to get money to buy more opiates. So we have that going on. And another thing that I know is as well in Boxford is the commuting. What's happening is people are driving after injecting the drugs, and they're impaired. They can't drive a vehicle safely, and they're
Right.
causing crashes. They're causing other people to get hurt, and that's something that we take very seriously. But it's also the legislature hasn't helped us out yet. We're talking about the implied consent law is all good for alcohol. When you get pulled over, you've already made an agreement saying that if I get stopped by the police officer and they think I'm impaired by alcohol, I'll submit to a breath test or face sanctions. This is the biggest thing I'm talking about with the opioid epidemic and also the cannabis movement is there's nothing in the legislature to say if we think you're under the influence driving a vehicle, we think you could cause some serious damage. We want to test you.
Right.
And that's one thing we're all dealing with now is how do we go around that?
How do you handle it if somebody shoots up heroin, they get behind the wheel of a car? It's not like you can give them a breathalyzer. You pull them over, you know they're impaired on something. How do you determine what that is without violating their rights? I mean, it's Massachusetts after all, and we know the legislature cares more about criminals' rights than protecting the rest of us.
Some officers have special training that allows them to make that judgment. We do training with other officers just to give them a go-by, but there's a lot of ways to tell, believe it or not. Especially
There is,
with opiates.
really?
Yeah, there is.
How do you handle it in Boxford? I mean, you get the same type of community as North Andover. You got people driving while they're shooting up.
We have one officer as a DRE. He's on the evening shift, so he's done a great job for us. We're also in contact with Topsfield, North Andover, so also other DREs in the area. So if we have concern, we make sure we check it out.
Chief Gray, do you think that someone should have to, if they're Narcan, go mandatory for a certain period of time? Because I know you guys make them go to the hospital, but they can just check themselves out, right?
Yeah, I mean, in North Andover, to answer your question from before, we carry 8 milligrams, 2 4 milligram doses. That's helped us with our overdoses immensely because, as the Chief Solomon said, the fentanyl's a lot more potent, and because of that, we've had to carry a heavier dose. And also, if an officer is exposed to it while they're giving Narcan, we want to have the officer to have one for themselves.
Right.
So
Right.
it depends again on a medical professional to see whether they would deem this person, a candidate for a 20-day program, or if they're saying no, they're not ready yet. They haven't hit rock bottom.
What do the other chiefs think? I mean, if someone is Narcan, shouldn't they have to go for some kind of treatment so that they're just not a constant drain on the system? Chief Solomon was telling me in the interview I did with him 2 years ago that he's finding that they're now canning people 3 and 4 and 5 times, and sometimes they're not coming back because their body's getting used to it.
So, Tom, what's actually happened is Narcan's got stronger. So we were always carrying 2 milligram doses. We currently carry 4 milligram doses, plus each officer has 2 4 milligram doses that they're only supposed to use on themselves in case they get exposed. So sometimes we saw ourselves giving 5 or 6 2 milligram doses.
Wow.
Now maybe 3 or 4 of the 4s. So we're giving stronger dosage, which is helping, but obviously from our analysis, it's the fentanyl impact is why the dose is so much higher. Now, if you can get a paramedic there, they can give them an intramuscular shot of Narcan, and they can use less of a dose and have a better impact. I firmly believe, and I actually had the opportunity to testify last year at the House and Senate hearing on the mandatory stay. We asked for 14 days. If you overdose or you have Narcan used on you for an overdose, so even if there's not Narcan, just an overdose, you're taken to the hospital, we ask that they have to go in, they have to be held 14 days, at least give them some time, not only to immediately detox, but begin a rehabilitation program. Currently, it's up to 72 hours. We thought that was at least a gain, but what happens is it's up to 72 hours or medically cleared.
Right.
So they want to leave. The doctor told them, but what's happening is the doctor comes in, so 12 hours later, 8 hours later, okay, medically you're cleared, the Narcan has resolved it, you're not capable of a relapse because the half-life of the heroin and fentanyl is longer than the half-life of the Narcan, then at that point they're releasing them. So there's still a little bit of an issue, but I absolutely believe they need to be turned into a program and then at least detox over a certain, even if it's 3 days, then try to get them to convince. And again, you really have to have someone willing to get help. But the problem is they overdose, we Narcan them, they go to the hospital. If the doctors clear them in 12 or 16 hours, you know where they
They
are?
just check themselves up, and
They-
go shoot up again.
They go out and they re-overdose, and then sometimes the effect is even stronger,
Right.
and then you're running into a possible death. So that is definitely an issue.
Chief Riter, what do you think? Do you think that if someone is Narcan, I mean, it's a terrible drain on the system. I'm okay with Narcanning them because they're human beings. We don't want them to die, no matter what their circumstances. Shouldn't they have to go into treatment for a certain period of time to at least give the rest of us like a 14-day break?
They need the break for themselves. They need
Yeah.
to get away from where they are, the people they surround themselves with. They need a break just from the area they're in to try to get them a head start to get clean.
Chief DeNaro, what do you think?
I'm going to guess it's a funding issue, right, Tom?
Right.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. They need to go in. I mean, one of the problems that we had, and Joe kind of alluded to it a little bit, is that we were seeing ODs, and they were going to the hospital. They were getting a cab from the hospital, going back to their vehicles, still somewhat under the influence and driving off. So we started a program about 2.5 years ago where if we take you on an OD, we tow your car.
Oh, nice.
So
I like that.
And that was something I did because they kept going back to the
I
cars.
bet Fiorentini was all over you when you first time you did that. I bet the mayor was all over you the first time you did that.
I don't think he's had a complaint yet. So
Really? Okay, well, good. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Hasn't
That's
had
awesome.
an issue with it. But, I mean, I did that basically because not only for their safety, but it seems that when they're behind the wheel, they seem to be crashing into innocent people who are going about their business. And more times than not, it's the innocent people that are being seriously injured or killed and not them.
Right.
Same thing with drunk drivers. It always seems that the drunk driver seems to fare better than the poor person that he hits
Right.
in a car. So, I mean, I did it basically because I'm concerned about, God forbid they hit a carload of with a soccer mom and 3 kids in the car. I don't want to live with that. So we just hook the car and take it. If we take you to the hospital, we take your car.
Chief Gray, what do you think about this Gloucester Angels program? There's been much that's been made about it. Liberals are celebrating it. Junkie advocates are celebrating it. Health professions is celebrating it. And then as soon as CNN started celebrating it, I got worried. What do you are you guys okay with that?
Well, I've spoken to the district attorney's office, and quite frankly, I don't think it was done right because we don't have the authority to grant immunity if someone commits a crime. So the program that they have is good intentions, I should say, but well intended, but it's not by the law, and therefore I don't think you can just do it for the sake of doing it. You have to have the DA's office involved and the DA to be on board with you before you just venture out.
It sounds to me like the legislature is really far behind on all this. You guys are on the front line. You see what you see. And the answers that I've gotten here, and hopefully we've educated people at home, it seems as though they're not listening to you guys. I know that you had just had a summit of some kind where the governor spoke, and we actually have that video. We're going to run that in post-production when people watch this afterwards, and we're going to bring it back for another show. He seemed really mad. I've never seen Charlie Baker that mad when he was talking about the opioid crisis with you guys. And the failure of the opioid crisis and what you guys deal with on the street versus what the legislature is allowing you to do. If you could get a state rep who had someone like Diana DeZoglia or Frank Moran that had some juice, or Linda Campbell that has some juice leadership, and you could get them to introduce any one bill that would help with this opioid crisis, what would it be? Anybody?
I would say it would be the bill, Diane DeZoglio and the chairman of the opioid committee, Senator Flanagan at the time, she's no longer there, had come to our city and we talked, and they had us testify at their hearing. And in the bill was the mandatory hold period. It's no longer medically cleared, it's mandatory. You come in, you will be held for 72 hours, and after that 72 hours, you'll be mandated into a secondary program for X amount of days to be determined with a minimum number, but a maximum determined by your rehabilitation efforts and success. I would say for me, it would be the mandatory holds, not 72 hours or medically cleared. I take the words medically cleared out, and I'd add in a secondary step. I think from the experience I've gained from talking with a lot of individuals who are addicted or currently using or addicted and in recovery, they have said if somebody was able to give us that next step, we went through detox a number of times, but then we went home. And then we're home, and who are we with? We're with our friends. And then what are we doing? We're reusing. If someone could have got us into the intermediate step where it allows you to clear your mind, not that you're not physically addicted, more psychological addiction.
Right.
I would request a bill that would mandate The 72 hours plus a minimum of a certain amount of days to be determined by a doctor before the bill's written, and a maximum that you must be held before you can be released.
Chief
That's
Riter, what do you think about the Angels program? Do you agree with that, Chief Gray?
Yeah, I'm not intimately experienced in it. We haven't had that problem at our station, so it's something that obviously we do everything. We try to work with the district attorney's office and make sure anything we do is definitely cleared through them and make sure it's legally and also morally proper.
Chief DeNaro, would you be okay with the legislature changing the law to make it mandatory? And what do you think of the Angels program?
Well, there's a few things. First is as far as the law is concerned, I think they need to have some type of mandatory hold. But one of the issues that we face is if you're walking down the street with your friend and you're high on drugs, heroin, and he's drunk, we can take you into protective custody at the station. We can't do anything with the person that's on
High.
drugs. And
So you can take a drunk in, but you can't take someone who's high.
correct.
That's bizarre.
We have to go to a hospital, and then they have to be examined there, and then the doctor looks at them and says, "Up, they're okay," and they can go. But I can hold you. What is it? 6 hours? We can hold you. I mean, so
Right.
there's a big difference as far as how we deal with people who are drinking alcohol and somebody that has a needle. It's a huge difference, which I think that needs to be addressed at some point. I don't know if it's going to because they're afraid of the liability. If you take them in the station and then they OD or they die there, but if they did OD in the station after you took them in, we have the Narcan there. You have your radio. You got your paramedics that are right next to your station. So
Right.
I think it'd be the best place for them as compared to somewhere out on the street without constant supervision by, a police department or a matron if your department has one. So as far as the Angel program is concerned, I mean, I work very closely with John Blodgett, DA Blodgett. And
Is he as useless as he seems?
no, he's not a bad guy. John is pretty squared away. He's very pro police. John is very pro police. He understands, what we're facing, what we have to do. He's a strong advocate, especially for the chiefs. And one of the issues that we had, as was alluded to, is that we're not allowed to make deals for the DA's office. They're the prosecutory arm of this whole thing. We make the arrests. So you can't just arbitrarily tell people, okay, I'm not going to charge you, but I'm going to charge him.
Right.
You can't do that. So I was never really involved in the Angel program, which is why we started our own program. We've got the sergeant, 2 officers, and somebody from NFI, a counselor, who go out and we try to get people into the programs. But we don't have a ton of people that come in the station and knock on the front door and say, I need help. Usually it's when somebody gets caught or they overdose or they're involved in an arrest where you have an opportunity to kind of circumvent the path that they're on, hopefully, and get them straightened out.
We're running a little short on time, and thanks to Dave, he's going to let us go a little bit over. Thank God we're not on radio anymore, so not everybody going, we have a hard break we have to take. We have to do news. So we can go a little bit over because it's a podcast and it's the internet. And I'd like each of you to answer this question. Whoever wants to go first, I think we can probably start with Chuck Gray and Chief Gray, move this way.
I was going to guess it would be Joe Solomon.
No, we're going to start that way.
Okay.
Come this way. So what, you think he's my favorite now? Is that what you're trying to say? You're almost right about that. So the violence that we see in Lawrence, and I see it every night because I chase police calls in Lawrence with the scanner every night. Sometimes I'm in Methuen because something spills over into Methuen. Sometimes I'm in North Andover, but I try to hide because North Andover cops.
Sometimes you even think it's Haverhill and it's Lawrence.
Sometimes, right, exactly. So I just want each of you to just talk a little bit about the spin-off crimes that you're seeing because of the opioid. I know Chief Gray talked a little about the B&Es, breaking and enterings, and the stolen cars. But are you seeing an increase in violence? Are you seeing an increase in domestics because they're using these drugs? Are you seeing an increase in shootings, stabbings?
First, just preface this with the DA Blodgett. He's actually got a program in place with the diversionary program for drug addicts. So he's actually taken a lot of positive steps to make things work for us because I don't have a program in this town of North Andover. So we're using the DA's office. He's doing a fantastic job.
Okay.
As far as the violent crimes, we don't see those per se because a lot of times, like I said, the secondary crimes we're witnessing are the larcenies, the B&Es, the car breaks, and whatnot. The only time that we see a lot of violence when it's drug related is because they go into like a department store and they get caught and they know they have warrants and they know they're going to jail for a few days or they know they're not going to be able to use their drugs and they run, they fight, and they make a break for it because it's better than getting caught.
So they're going into Kohl's and they're shoplifting, but they're high. And the minute you guys show up, they freak out because they got warrants. They don't want to. So that's
It's not even like Kohl's, anything down at the mall, but it's just any place where they know they're going to get caught.
Right.
And it's because of the withdrawal from this drug is so powerful that to them it's worth it. And that's the sad part of it is this drug is, if you've ever seen somebody detox in a cell for a little while, it's awful to watch.
Chief DeNaro. I know your answer is going to be a little different because I've ridden around Haverhill a little bit. What are you guys seeing about?
Our answer is entirely different. Ours are gang-related violence as a result of drugs. Our gangs are interchangeable with Lawrence. They freely go back and forth. They're now starting to even go to Amesbury a little bit. But predominantly, when it gets hot in Lawrence, they come to Haverhill. When it gets hot in Haverhill, they go to Lawrence. A lot of the shootings that we've had are over drug disputes or people who didn't pay or shipments that were misdirected and that type of thing. Gangs disrespect each other, and it leads to significant problems, and a lot of them are drug related. So yeah, ours are our violence is significant as a result of gangs and drugs.
Are you seeing that the gangs are becoming more violent and more prevalent on the streets of Haverhill like they are in Lawrence? Like Lawrence, 10, 15 years ago, we had gangs, but they were like kids that were pretending they were in gangs, throwing gang signs around. Now we've got actual MS-13 members. We have actual Latin Kings. We have actual Trinitarios. Are you guys seeing that there too?
To a certain extent, I think that it would be more accurate to say that it seems that the gang members that we're dealing with today, as compared to, say, even a decade or 15 years ago, there seems to be less of a regard for human life, and they don't seem to value the life that's out there, and it's nothing to take a gun and shoot into somebody's house, and that's the scary part, is that there's no value, and that's very frightening for us.
So the reason I have all four of these chiefs here is because they come from such different communities. Boxford is very different from the rest. Are you seeing an increase in domestic violence? Are you seeing an increase in any kind of violence because of the drugs in Boxford? Or is it pretty much hush-hush? I mean, are they going to other communities to do their stuff and then just coming home and going to bed?
We see some in the traffic stops, motor vehicle issues is coming through.
You got
And then-
95 runs right through you, right?
And then we also see calls for more services to the family. And we do discuss as far as having a 14-day hold period if they are administering Narcan.
Mm-hmm.
That's not only good for the addict, it's good for the family. Because a lot of these families are just hoping and trying to find something to do. Because in Boxford, they're taking their children in or a loved one in to try to get them help in the home setting. And if that doesn't work, they need a next step to get that person to it, to get them out of the house. And it gives them a break also, because a lot of the times we're talking to the families and they don't know where to turn next. They've tried different programs, they've tried certain things, and they just need something to give them help also.
So I'd like to wrap up because everybody's sending me instant messages from the audience saying we're way over time. And we still have another segment after this. Can each of you just wrap up with trying to educate the public on something that is not talked about, something that you can just impart on them about this? You might have addicts watching. You might have family members of addicts watching. One of the things that I always like, I'm going to steal one of the answers so you can't use it. One of the things I always tell people is get all of your opiates, get all of your prescription drugs out of your friggin' medicine cabinet, because the first thing a relative or a friend that's addicted to something does when they come over your house is they say, what, can I use your bathroom? And the first thing they do is they go through your medicine cabinet, and you got 35 Vicodins in a bottle, suddenly you've got 10, and you don't know it till the next time you need to take one. Is there anything like that you can impart on people as far as this opioid crisis that they can actually learn something with take away from today? Anybody?
Sure, Tom. So what you just said, I actually talked to a couple of real estate agents who said they're having problems with home showings, that people, as they're going through the home, are going through people's medicine cabinets.
Really?
Right online. Not only is it get rid of it, but make sure it's locked up. I think goes on yours. But what I'd say to people is situational awareness of your family. People say, I knew something was wrong with Lisa or Johnny. So as soon as you see the behavioral change, the change of the friends, the situation that they're in, any change to them, you need to now take it the next step. And you need to explore and don't feel bad about going to their room when they're not at home.
So real estate people should be very, very cognizant of the fact when they're showing houses, they should be advising the people whose houses they're showing, listen, if you've got any prescription drugs around, just lock them up, like during this period that you're trying to sell your house. That's great advice. Chief Riter?
I'd say for families that are going through a problem, I think there may be a problem, one, be vigilant, and two, reach out. Make sure you understand there's a lot of people going through the problem. and make sure you reach out to a police or professional or someone that might be able to help and get some early information.
Chief DeNaro.
One of the things that I've seen personally is I have gone and we reached out to families of young people that we knew were addicted, and the families pushed us away. They want to handle it themselves. They want it to be quiet. My advice to these people who are considering that, in this one particular case, the young man was dead 2 weeks later.
Wow.
And, the mom is crying at the wake saying, I should have listened. I should have listened. And what do you say at that point? And I think the best advice that I can give is that what we see with these addiction problems, especially with opioids, is that 3 or 4 times in rehab is not unusual. Nobody's doing this once and kicking it and they're done.
Right.
So you got to understand
trying.
there's going to be some failures involved, but you have to reach out, and you have to reach out early, get them in these programs, get them on the radar screen so that they have a fighting chance to beat this. If you don't, you think you can handle it yourself, you absolutely cannot do a family intervention and handle it yourself. It is not going to work.
This is all great advice, Chief Gregg.
I would just follow up with the 3 other chiefs and just say that don't judge. Don't allow a stigma to influence your judgment as far as reaching out for help. We don't use the term junkies anymore at all. They're addicts, and that is trying to take away the stigma of having that battle. And so
So I shouldn't use junkie anymore.
No. And that's part of the reason why your stats are underreported, because people are afraid to call for Narcan. They're afraid to call and say, they overdose. So I speak for some of the other officers. When you go to a call and they say, oh, she just dropped, she took something else. If it's heroin or fentanyl, let us know and let us take care of it and let us get you some help. Don't worry about the stigma that's going with it.
Right. So honesty and no stigma. Talk to real estate people if you're showing houses or if you're having anybody come in, if you're having somebody who's vacationing with you, and just give me yours again, because I want to recap.
I just want to make sure you reach out, let someone know about the problem.
Reach out and talk to someone.
Discuss with the police department, we have a fire department, we have plenty of people that help. We have a Tri-Town Council, which is Youth and Family Services. There's a lot of groups out there that are there to help, even in the Tri-Town community. It's very important to get the help you need.
All right, excellent. And just recap what you already said.
It's a long process. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 failures involved.
Keep trying.
You have to stay on course.
Yeah. One of the things Charlie Baker said as we go into our break before our last segment, one of the things Charlie Baker said at the summit you guys were at, I watched the video last night on Vimeo. When we tend to tell people that if you fail at life, if you try to achieve your dream, if you want something in life that you fought for and you fail, you should keep trying. And then when someone uses drugs and they fail, we just call them a failure and we put our hands up. And we have to stop doing that. We have to stop thinking. I know someone who's actually sitting in this room who had to go 7 times for rehab before they finally kicked it. In this room, who's kicked heroin. And when she's ready to talk about it, we're going to have her come up here and talk about it at a subsequent show. But my advice to people, I'm not a police chief, but just from what I've seen, failure is an option when you're a junkie. When you're addicted. When you try to get clean and you fail, that doesn't make you a failure. It just means you have to try again. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I really think we've educated people into a lot of stuff today. Hopefully you guys all had fun and you'll come back, but just not all at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thanks. We'll be back after this. I'm paying attention where everybody gets it except Colonel Sam Polton and Bob LeBlanc. Bob LeBlanc.